All right, everyone. Welcome back to Esoterica. And this is a bit of a Halloween treat. I've been threatening to do this forever, to do a live commentary on this fantastic film of Ari Aster, Hereditary. But I have it even better. I'm really excited and really honored to be able to welcome back Marco Visconti and Aaron Leitch, two practitioner folks that I have a great deal of respect and admiration for both your works. And I'm really excited to get your insight into what's going on in this film, like what jives with sort of occult practice and what doesn't, what makes for good film and what makes for good practice, and also maybe a little bit some goetia stuff in terms of what's going on in this great film Hereditary. But I guess what I first want to say are two things. One, spoiler alerts. You should not watch this film the first time with the three blathering dudes in the background. You should watch this film and really appreciate it as a work of art first and foremost, and then come back and listen to us blather on about it. And two, I just want to wish everyone a very happy Halloween. And if this is for you a religious holiday, a Samhain, I want to also wish you a very meaningful and blessed Samhain. And I really hope that this transition in this part of the year is incredibly meaningful and powerful for you. It can be both a very fun holiday, but also this is a very important spiritual holiday for a great many viewers out there. And I want to honor both of those realities. But I want to welcome back Marco Visconti, Aaron Leitch. Thank you guys so much for joining me to really dive into a film, an occult related film, and get some expert commentary from some practitioners I really respect. Thank you guys for coming on.
Well, thank you, Justin. It's a pleasure for me, for Aaron as well, I guess, to be back here, and we're gonna have some fun discussing spooky demons, I suppose, for Halloween, which is the best time of the year.
We had so much fun last time, so thanks for asking us back. And I promise this time I'm not so passionately angry at this movie that I've got to run my mouth the whole time. So we might actually get to watch the movie this round.
Well, you say that, but maybe I'm the one who has things to say about it.
Feel free, man. Feel free.
It's the Marco soapbox. Marco, just before we get started, Marco and Aaron, you guys didn't mind introducing yourself and just letting us know kind of what you're working on? And I'd love to. I got some classes coming. I got some books out. Marco, you mind taking the mic first and
I'll start. So yeah, my name is Marco Visconti. I am mostly known for my first book, the Aleister Crowley Manual, Thelemic Magic for Modern Times, which implies I'm a Thelemite, and that's been my focus for the last few years. I've been trying to teach Thelema to a more wider group, outside orders, outside hierarchical structure. It's been going pretty well, to be fair. The book has been very well received, and I'm writing the second one, possibly out at some point. I'm very slow. I'm not like Justin. I cannot produce, so much material, written material at once, but it's coming. And in fact, right now I am running my first course on the concept of the Holy Guardian Angel, from a strictly Thelemic perspective, which is a very different thing from you'll find in other traditions, as Aaron knows very well. But it started a few days ago, and we're running it. This is the first week we're in. If you're interested, you can still learn more about it on my website. It's Marco Visconti, my name.org, and you'll find all the information about this current course or other courses that I teach, which you can join at any time as a self-paced approach. And that's it in a nutshell. Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Wonderful. And I'll have links in the description for all these things. So folks, look in the description for this material. Aaron, say a couple words about yourself, what you got going on, what you're teaching, what you're writing, a little bit about your books.
Well, my name's Aaron Leitch, and I am mostly known as a Solomonic practitioner, which is interesting for today because the Solomonic tradition and texts are the historical reality that this movie, that inspired this movie. So I'm hoping to bring a little bit of that perspective into the works. If you're interested in this kind of magic, and not what you're going to see in the movie, but the real thing, I offer classes on it. I also have several books, the main one on this subject being called Secrets of the Magical Grimoires. And you can find the classes, the books, and all the material on my website, which is called docsolomons.com.
Wonderful. And again, I'll have that description. And I have both you guys' books. I have several of Aaron's books on the shelf. You probably might be able to see them behind me.
We can see
And
something in the behind
yeah,
you.
and I have Marco's books back there as well. I think you can probably see all several of them back there as well. So great books, and thank you guys for the work that you do, and the classes you teach, the education you provide, the spiritual leadership that you provide. And that said, let's jump into some.
Let's go
Let's go give Paimon a little bit of royalties.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I always tell people, man, if I could have anybody's agent, it would be Paimon. Paimon is a really good agent of all the demons in Hollywood. Paimon's agent really is well connected.
Paimon is a good guy or girl. I mean, like it's a discussion we might have later on, right?
True. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
All right. So, folks, what we're going to do here, we just have it all queued up on our screens, and we're just going to do a short countdown so you can start it with us at the same time. But 5, 4, 3, 2, play.
Okay. This time it has started properly. Last time it was like scrambling around.
It might help if I started the right file.
I mean, it's like
there we go. I got it.
At the same time, we'll see. We're always a little bit like discombobulated, but that's fine.
And Aaron, we're about 30 seconds in. If you just want to zoom over to that, if you want.
I have like the letters in front.
That's where I am. Yeah, it's about where I am. Good.
Yeah. It starts with a death, right? Which sets up the tone of the.
Yeah, you know it's going to be a real cheery movie when it starts with an obituary.
Starts with an obit.
And again, it's great. I love when films kind of begin and end in the same way. It's an Ouroboros kind of feeling,
right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we begin looking at.
And by the way, like this is already why you should not watch this movie with us right now if you never watch it, because we already spoiled something.
We're going to spoil it.
I want you
full circle from this shot to the end of the movie.
Right, you go from the outside but to the inside, right? And I love that Ouroboros kind of.
It is very Ouroboros. Yeah, absolutely.
How did George Lucas say? It rhymes.
That's right.
I like that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yep.
I also like this wide pan and shot is. I always try to figure out if there's something already in this shot that could be magical, but I could never like pinpoint anything.
I think I always imagine these sort of wide panning shots as sort of omniscient viewpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that sort of spirits kind of see everything at once. Also, the distinction here that they're going to make between what is real and what is imaginary,
what is fake. Yeah, absolutely.
What is fake, like it's that those are important distinctions. I think that are important. Again, the power of the imagination is core and at least historically in the practice of magic.
I would say it's very important to have an active imagination. I mean, if you work with spirits in general. What do you say, Aaron?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sorry, I was getting a little caught up in the scene here because I think it's rather interesting that they start this whole thing by zooming in on this dollhouse, and that the actual action begins there. So it kind of almost gives you the impression that this entire thing is happening within this fake world.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Magical realism.
Mm-hmm. De Martino would be happy about that.
I really think this movie missed being truly great, but I don't want to say why yet. We'll discuss that later. But yeah, it has a little to do with this dollhouse kind of thing they got going on.
And I love, again, to go back to this topic of imagination. I think that really thinking through the imagination not as simply a thing that generates images in the sort of very modernist way the term is used, but thinking of the imagination as an organ of sensation, an organ of perception. It's such a important difference between older pre-modern conceptions of imagination than
well, I mean, it's almost like a skill to to pluck ideas from somewhere else, right? As opposed to like just creating it in your mind's eye. The girl is so creepy.
Yes, she is.
Yeah, Just a shockingly good actress.
Fantastic actress, but she really nailed the job, right? Like it's like do a very creepy little girl. Done. I love her. Like right now, she's already, putting. Why would the mother be surprised by that or not? Well, now we know, right? But she doesn't know at the moment.
Right. And this always strikes me as like almost a sequel to Rosemary's Baby. Like, what happened if someone in Rosemary's Baby were to die? I always think of this as sort of the other side of Rosemary's Baby.
That's a good point. Yeah, I mean, you could see it like that.
A little.
Because of course those cultists had other friends, right? Normie friends. Like, what happens when you?
Actually, I thought The Omen was the sequel to Rosemary's Baby.
The sequel to the sequel.
Okay, first shot on the medallion, right? Yep. Should we just say right away that that's not the actual seal of Paimon? Because if you see it,
it's stylized.
It is no. Like, if you look at it, it has only 3, glyphs as opposed to 4.
Right. Well, and I think 3 is meant to be. It's meant to be 666.
Yeah, exactly. In that.
Right. And of course, those glyphs change, right, from manuscript to manuscript. There is a great deal of there is some significant deal of variation within historically from the manuscript tradition.
I think I remember. I might be wrong. I remember that there was an interview with Aster, and he said literally that he changed the seal so that people would not use that to try and conjure Paimon if they didn't know anything like that. I'm gonna look for it. Maybe I can send it to the link.
Great foreshadowing there with the EpiPen and the chocolate bar.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're establishing her nut allergy.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you watch this movie again, you realize that a lot already happened right now, right?
Right. In some sense, the entire movie's happened, right? Like you get like, oh yeah, like, but it's esoteric. You would have to be able to read hieroglyphs to know what's going on, visual cues and things like that. So in the sense the movie is doing esotericism quite well. The movie's already starting off in a sort of esoteric way. You would know if you knew.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hamavin yavin, we say in Hebrew. If you know, you know.
You know.
You know. It's subtle too. The first time I saw this, I didn't even notice that the mother was wearing the seal around her neck in the coffin.
It's because you're a hardcore traditionalist, Aaron. You're like, that's not the right seal.
It's not the right seal, so I didn't even notice it.
Trust me, in this time, I'm gonna be more pissed off about things later on.
And see, now we're back to the model.
Mm-hmm. I never remember the name of this actor. It looks like, what's his name? Dude, I should see it here. It's.
I just don't recall her name.
Can see it.
And it's interesting, again, this dollhouse business. There's a famous line by Jonathan C. Smith, the famous religious study scholar, who talks about the map and the territory and how it's very important not to confuse them. Whereas in this movie, intentionally confuses them.
Confuses it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is like almost like a callback to the idea that the demons will confuse you. The approach of like demons are liars and confuse you and will put you in a state of I don't know, doubting yourself, which has not been my experience, obviously. But then again, I'm a Thelemite. I would say so.
Depends on which spirits you're dealing with, really.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, one thing's for sure: the spirits in the Goetia, they're just like Gene. They're not the whole Christian overlay of them being ravenous, evil creatures that want your soul. That's all just nonsense.
What's your take about Jake Stratton-Kent's approach? Geosophia, like that these are like old pagan
Oh,
spirits.
absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
Jake's work revolutionized my take on a lot of the, especially Goetia, because if you look at Secrets of the Magical Grimoires, my whole premise is that what you see in the grimoires is a survival of not paganism, of shamanism into the urban areas. The wizard, the sorcerer took over the role of the healer. And I'm already forgetting the point I was going to make about that.
No, we got it.
I have not been awake long enough.
It's just.
But yeah. Oh, that's right. We're talking about Jake Kent. But yeah, my whole premise was that this was a survival of shamanism. And I did a lot of comparison between what's in the grimoires and old shamanic cultures. But Jake was the one who actually put a finger on the actual shamans where all of this came from, which I hadn't done. So yeah, his work is really important, and all of his work on the ancient Greek Goen and all of that stuff. It's very good stuff, and I highly recommend it.
I just mention it because I'm still surprised that it was like 13, 14 years after that work came out, you will still find Golden Dawn, and I know it's not you, but Golden Dawn style magicians that will say demons are evil, and they're the darker side of the angels. As you know, we had the discussion on Facebook recently, right?
I can tell you from my personal experience, the angels have told me that the whole war in heaven thing is nonsense that never happened. Yeah. Not even from their mythological perspective. There was never a war. You can't war against God. It's just not even possible. So yeah, the whole rebellion in heaven thing is just something that the church came up with. It has no actual practical applicability.
I guess it was also Milton that popularized it, right? Like Paradise Lost is such a strong story. Right. Everybody wants to be that, right? And romanticism is like we liked it.
And in the book of Revelation, it's not clear when it takes place. Mm-hmm. Whether it takes place at the end. It's not a Jewish concept either. We don't have this concept of a war in heaven.
Exactly. Even Samael still serves God.
Yeah, there's no concept.
He got in trouble once, but that doesn't mean he's a rebel and the source of all evil.
Well, it's also just two competing theories in antiquity about where the evil came from, whether it was angels coming down to mate with women, and that was the Enochian theory of evil. And then the Christians pioneered a new theory, the Luciferian rebellion theory, based on Isaiah 9. So there were just competing theories of where evil came from in the ancient world. The Gnostic theory that it was sort of the result of some cosmic fall. So really there was a real debate about nature. Theogony was an active debate in the classical world, the classical world.
And am I recalling correctly? There is I am. There's a legend about Samael too, that Samael is the source of anger among humans.
Yeah. And then the Kabbalah has a whole other
consuming anger.
Right. Yep. And there's a whole Kabbalistic theory of the origin of evil is completely different than all of this.
It's kind of interesting. Yeah. We're talking about this the very moment in the movie she finds out the letter from her mother, which is evil does play a big role in this. Oh, look at that! There's the mother there. It's so creepy when I.
And this is one of the criticisms I guess I have of films like this, is that it continues that idea that these are all demonic entities, and that occultists are ultimately up to evil. That the occult, the linking of the occult with evil, I think it forwards the sort of satanic panic as a kind of radioactive half-life, and I think that does 100%. Great harm to a great many people's spiritual beliefs, and y'all's especially. And I find that a bit regrettable that it kind of functions as extending the half-life of the satanic panic.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely agree. It's just that, especially being raised Christian as I was, or Southern Christian, Protestant Christian, anything to do with a spirit was evil. If a spirit was in your house, it's evil. Get rid of it. If you encounter a spirit, and I never understood that. It's like, what makes a spirit evil just by its basic nature? It almost seems like a form of racism. Even St. Paul says, test the spirits. Yeah.
So,
Another thing people don't realize is the word demon did not originally have a negative connotation.
No, the
It
Greek
was a
word
synonym
for
with the
happiness
word
is
envy.
eudaimonia.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And it
have
was
a good daimon.
where it comes to spirits, it was a synonym with intelligence. It just meant a spirit or genius. So a demon, the original church fathers wrote about evil demons, but they specified evil demons.
Right.
Demon by itself wasn't evil.
Yeah. I guess we're getting to the point where
also a callback to our last viewing, right? A dark song. That was the first sign in the dark song too. Remember, the bird hits the window.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Birds hitting windows apparently is a.
It's something that happens when evil arrives.
If you think about any movie, a bird hitting a window and dying is always a bad sign.
Yeah. Bad thing.
To your point, Aaron, about the daimones, right? Socrates famously had his daimon, and obviously there's no sense of his daimon. The Greek complaint about his daimon was not that it was a daimon, but it was a new. That's the complaint, a new daimon.
New daimon.
That was the problem. It's and the same with the criticism that they had of Romans had of Christianity. It was this new religion.
New, yeah. That's always the complaint.
Yeah. Still to this day, I mean, like it's always the same problem if you think about it.
Yeah. Again, more foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Hopeless pawns in this machine.
Yeah, I don't think there's much in this movie that's not foreshadowing. It seems like a pretty tightly woven narrative.
Oh, if you think about it views a lot like a novel.
Yeah, and I don't think he wasted a shot for anything. You know,
I mean, I don't know what's more foreshadowing than this.
What kind of foreshadowing could this be?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's a little on the nose, but again, I think what about this movie is interesting is how it internally repeats itself. There's a kind of delirium, repetition, a kind of maddening repetition that happens.
Which again, it's something that the demons of are accused of bringing, like this kind of delirium in people, like in practitioners, that especially when you look online about experts to speak about their experience with the Goetic demons or spirit. I don't even call them demons, to be fair. Most of the times, call them spirits.
Yeah, and certainly what Augustine thought. If you look at the classic Augustinian vision of what's going on here, it maps onto that quite well. That they prey on confusion and things like this.
Yeah, when you see someone who does dabble in the occult and they screw up and things go bad, it's like that. It's usually an obsession that will get them, and you'll just watch their life just fall apart as they just make bad decision after bad decision.
And I do love when people I hear people dabbling and people say, "Oh, I dabbled in the occult and it made me crazy for a while." I'm not saying you dabble with power tools and you cut your hand real bad. Like, you don't dabble with forces and machines and technologies that again, I dabbled with radioactivity and I got sick. I'm like, yeah, don't dabble with that kind of stuff.
Of course you did. I compare it to like an electrician. You don't go messing around with the electricity in your house. It can and will kill you if you don't know what you're doing. But that doesn't mean electricity is evil.
Yeah.
You just have to know what you're doing in order to work with it.
You're gonna laugh at this, but my publisher asked me to change something that was in the in the preface, where I said exactly that, right? Magic can and will hurt you, and they were like, "Oh, can you actually say something else?"
Could you not say that?
Any spiritual philosophical practice taken seriously is going to have an impact on your mental health, positively or negatively. I think it's only fair to make that clear to people at the outset.
And I teach people that if you're doing the magic right, you're going to go crazy for a while. It's going to tear your life apart because that's the whole spiritual alchemy point of it, is to tear down what was old and build something new that's stronger. And that's what the magical path will do. And then you get people who just get through the tear down part and then they run screaming, back into fundamentalist Christianity or something.
Yeah, and that's true of any real path of life change, whether it's Stoicism or any sort of converting to a new religion. Like, you convert to a new religion, it's going to change your life. It's going to mess your old life up.
I hereby die to the old life and am born to the new. We actually say that in the Golden Dawn.
I really think that, the problem we have in our culture right now is that a lot of this is still promoted as a way of getting things. Like, like you're going to do magic and you're going to get a better job or a better girlfriend or boyfriend or, more money. Which to me, yeah, you can do sorcery for these things, right? But, if you want to do it yourself, you still have to go into that stages of, like you were saying, Aaron, like craziness, and survive it, and then come back, from the forest to the village as a shaman, right? And then
exactly, you got to go through the ordeals and survive. That's the heart of shamanism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like
once you survive it, then your demons can't attack you anymore. they now have to serve you.
Which is the whole thing of Solomonic as well, right? Like, you...
Absolutely.
And again, layers of ritual, right? Like, this is clearly very ritualistic. Yeah. We have the circle, we have the confession, we have, again, like notice we have an empty seat there. There's something kind of haunted. There's an absence. It's a presence. And absolutely, this is also a ritual.
Yeah, it's like that seats for Paimon.
I think maybe it's time to say that I really don't like the way they presented Paimon in this movie. So let's go for it, because it's.
Would you say you don't like the way they present what?
Paimon, like the demon, the spirit. It's pretty much evil. Like, this, spoilers, is this like evil, evil leader, either a spiritual leader of this evil cult, and like, it's not my experience of this, especially that particular spirit, at all. So,
and it's not the description. None of this matches the description you get in the Livre d'Esprit or Johann Weyer, at least from the classical sources. It doesn't really match.
No.
Paimon's given sort of a really elevated position in a way that that they're in the ecosystem of the Goetic world, but don't strike you as especially evil.
Well, you guys brought up Jake Kent and his views, the way he presented it in Geosophia, and if you read my Secrets of the Magical Grimoires, I make a very big point at one place in that book that these spirits, these demons, are not the ancient pagan gods. That something happened and like new spirits were created. But thanks a lot to Jake's work and my own experience since writing that, I've learned that that's complete nonsense. The demons of the Grimoires 100% are the old pagan gods. But the twist is that the Christians were mainly interested in the chthonic aspects of the old pagan gods, the underworld aspects. So they're very demonic and scary and, monstrous, but they're not evil. They were never evil. Dangerous, yes, but not evil.
I mean, I would say the angels are dangerous as well, right? Like, every spirit can be dangerous.
Yeah. At least in Judaism, I'd rather deal with any shade demons than angels. Malachim are terrifying. Demons are, at least in Judaism, are a bit like wild animals. Malachim are like cosmic marines.
Exactly.
Exactly.
I love that cosmic.
An angel trod right over you and not even realize it stepped on you.
That's
the biggest problem with the demons is if you accidentally ring a dinner bell and serve yourself up to them. That's when they attack. And another thing they don't like is you being in control. That's really what makes all of this so dangerous, is that, like we said, that wrestling with the spirits and then overcoming them, going through the ordeals, that's the key. That they're having fun as long as they're in charge of you. They don't want to have to start following your rules and your commands. So there's where the struggle comes from. And they'll pull out all the stops to stop you from gaining that mastery.
The connection. Yeah. So, what's your take
That more
about
than anything else is why Abramelin is so dangerous.
What's your take about working with these spirits, with the Chthonic spirits, demons, as without constricting them, without flagellating them, going that approach that you hear a lot online these days, like we should befriend them and consider them our equal. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it sounds more to me like you're talking about demonolatry.
Yeah.
Where the demons aren't really bad at all. They've just had bad press and they're really the good guys and they're really nice and friendly. Yeah, that's nonsense. I compare it to like lion taming. These spirits are wild animals and they are dangerous. They're not evil, but they are wild animals. And if you don't know, if you climb into the cage and you don't know how to tame them, then you can end up like, Roy from Siegfried and Roy. So yeah, they're not.
How in Judaism,
they're not all good guys.
Yeah, they're conceived mostly as like something like wild animals, not evil, because we don't have that conception in Judaism. But yeah,
but not your best friend either.
Yeah, it's like like you said, like a bear or a tiger, but it's like a bear and a tiger with consciousness that has power over certain domains of elemental forces or something like that.
And especially they are the embodiments of nature. So you go out and if a tsunami's coming in and you stand on the beach going, nah, I'm friends with the spirit of the tsunami. He's a good guy. I make him offerings. Well, you're gonna die because it doesn't matter if you're friends with him. It's a force of nature.
Yeah, I often find so much of that as well. And again, I have to be careful wading into those kind of debates because I don't have a horse in that race. But I find it very hubristic. Frankly, it's very earthly, very like me-centered. Yes. And I find that anytime human beings become the center of the universe, I get worried.
Well, it's interesting to mention that because, of course, that's a big part of the dilemma, right? like you put yourself, not as a human being, like you try to put yourself at the center of the universe. There's an element of hubris in dilemma. I can't deny that.
It's like when Crowley changed the invocation in the Bornless ritual. The original says, "Make all spirits obedient unto me, and unto every spell and scourge of God, the vast one." And Crowley changed it to, "Every spirit will be obedient. Every spirit and every spell and scourge of God, the vast one, will be obedient unto me."
Unto me, yeah.
And I get it because I understand what Crowley was trying to do, but I mean, I'm just like, no, just no.
I use it.
I put it back the other way. I can't do that. I'm not above God. God does not have to be obedient unto me. That's not how this works.
You know what? This is interesting though, because like it works for you and it works for me. I wonder what is that? Like maybe at the end of the day, God doesn't care, right? The reality is maybe it could be that, right? Okay, every time the girl is on screen, it's creepy.
I think billions of people pray to thousands of gods, and everyone claims it works.
Yeah.
So everyone claims it works. Yeah, you got to look at their life.
For me to tell anyone that something is not working, and they're like, "No, I experienced it working." I'm like, absolutely nothing I can say to that. But is it responsible spiritualities that differ and prove to be to benefit people psychologically and spiritually and flourish as human beings?
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, Aaron was saying that like you got to see their lives and see what their lives is like, right? And that is the litmus test.
I also love this clicking that she does. You get this sense. I think of people who are sight disabled who click as a way of developing echolocation. There are people who are blind who can develop echolocation, but who can develop echolocation by clicking. It's as if she's already seeing something. She has a sense that we don't have.
I think I'm kind of losing you, Justin.
People who are blind can develop echolocation in the same way that a bat has it.
I think we're losing you, Justin, a little bit. Can't hear you very well.
I think is, I don't know, her ability to see in a way that we can't.
You were talking about the clicks, right?
Yeah, her clicking.
Yeah. Again, a lot of like foreshadowing with the knife.
Mm-hmm.
It's
also the
like
shift in music there. It's a very boisterous dancing club music to the this is very low strings.
Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a great movie. It's a great horror movie. That's undeniable.
And
I
again,
don't know
who's
if
looking at who? I love this. Like,
yeah, it really is something. Look at that.
and I will say, as much as the 80s sort of horror tropes around sex, drugs, and rock and roll, are going to get you killed. I do like it when a movie leans on those kind of old 80s
Mhm.
tropes. It gives me a little nostalgia kick. I'm like, all right, something's going to go bad because there's a bunch of young people and unresolved sexual tension as a kind of energy that has to get released somehow, and it's going to get released in obvious in a quite dreadful way in some sense.
I mean,
it's a
it was
problematic trope, but I'm sympathetic to it as an 80s kid.
I mean, it's the 80s, right? Like, I'm sympathetic to anything that brings me back to my childhood.
Yeah, I've seen analysis of those tropes that slasher movies were some of the most Christian propaganda films that were released in theaters in the 80s.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, good point, right?
Because
And again,
whole
I'm sure you guys
message
saw it,
was,
right, with the
don't
guillotine
party,
fall.
don't use drugs, don't have sex, otherwise the devil will get you.
Yeah, and of course the Paimon does. I'm sure. Did you guys see the guillotine drop when they were watching the show? Like, yeah, it's like again watching it third and fourth time. It's like, really, the guillotine? Did
You
you
can
just do
start to
that?
see things. Yeah,
A little on the
exactly.
nose.
All the things you don't see the first time, but then you cannot not see them anymore.
And also, again, the idea of fate, right? Like that's the conversation we were having earlier. They're trapped. There's some sense in which destiny is operating here. And again, I'm very sympathetic to the concept of destiny and fate as a non-Christian concept. That we're no longer living in a world in which God can protect you, because you might have a fate, and fate is an inherently pagan concept in my imagination. And I love the idea that there's fate operating here. That they are not inside of the world where an exclusively Christian logic is going to solve their problems. No exorcism is going to fix this. And again, this is an interesting world because it's the world that we all live in, but it's the world in which a fundamentally Christian logic is not going to actually apply. We're living in a world driven by pagan forces.
Which is also, you think about it, it's like big difference with those slasher movies we were discussing before, right? Because those movies, they had this underpinning, like there was something that could come and save you at some point. Here, gone. There's nothing there.
Right.
Here it comes. And I'll tell you what follows this tragic event, the way his scene especially, and the way he reacts and handles this.
Yeah,
this is one of the most horrifying things I've ever seen in a horror movie ever.
Yeah,
it's not even what happened to her; it's what happened in him. When I could totally see being a teenager and that happening to you, and you just disconnecting and acting like it didn't even happen.
Right. And also, terrible. Again, the scene of her having this anaphylactic shock. The concept of seizure, having a seizure, something is grabbing her. It's a sense of like something is throttling her. It's as if she's being choked from the inside. But yeah, there's nothing more horrifying I've seen. But
it's happening.
There it is. But to think of the power of grief as so powerful, it causes you to disassociate yourself. That it's that profound. And I think of to me, the most terrifying book I've read in recent years since I've become a father is Pet Sematary.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good one.
Like, I read Blood Meridian, and Blood Meridian's horrible, but Pet Sematary is terrifying as a father of young children because of the nightmare of grief.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is, again, the horror of grief, and there's a reason why this is the center of the movie. We are now in hell. This is like this is bottom at some level.
And you can see like the red in the back, which of course is like it's a stop light, but like it kind of like the red in the back in that shot really set up like the hell. Oh, look at this! Like it feels like there's something ominous behind, right?
Yeah, like fire almost. Yeah, I think you're right, Marco. We're in the chthonic.
Yeah.
And this is really, you get to go back to the conversation there about chthonic spirits. You are now in the underworld. Welcome to the underworld. And the journey out will be equally nightmarish.
Oh, nobody comes out alive.
To the point earlier, right? The
yeah.
That wide shot, just lonely, empty, alone.
Right. And it's so slow and it's so drawn out that completely in denial, right?
Yeah, I mean, you feel it. You feel the isolation. He doesn't even park the car correctly. It's completely checked out. What a horrifying nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, like, look at this. Ooh.
Yeah,
it does send you shivers down your spine, right?
It does.
I mean, this is more. Yeah, this is more horrifying than a lot of other things that happen afterwards.
Sure, because there's nothing to be done about grief.
Yeah,
that even being confronted with a supernatural spirit, you have a fighting chance. But there is no fighting chance against grief.
No.
And also grief born out of your own negligence. What a horrifying situation, though. At some level, you're responsible for this because you're out, kind of teenage flirting around or whatever.
Imagine that on a teenage kid. His life is over. His life is done, and he knows it.
Yeah.
And he's just in a zombie state of shock right now. I can totally understand that. I have a little brother and sister, and I could just imagine if something that drastic had happened to one of them under my watch and me having to go back to my parents, and I would have checked out. They would have had to put me in a rubber room.
Yeah.
And he just goes to sleep because what else can he do? And that leaves his mother to find that in the morning. And that just, wow, this is some heavy stuff, man.
Yeah, it's tough. And again, you don't even get the sense that I'm not sure, Aaron, that he even went to sleep. And he hasn't blinked.
He might have just laid there. You're right. And then he just has to hear his mother find her. This whole sequence is what made this a horror movie for me. None of the other stuff really did.
Right. Yeah. The other everything else is relatively tame. Which again, it shows you the image. Yeah, and the sort of prostrate position.
What a shot. Good Lord.
Yeah.
And you even get the sense of the it's a birthing position almost. You get there's some combination of birthing and dying, and
right.
in a really because something is being birthed, right? Charlie is.
Yeah.
And that's the real night. Again, the nightmare only deepens because Charlie is being transformed. And Charlie and Paimon are being fused. And again, Paimon in the logic of the film, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think we should say right now, like, this is not my experience of Paimon. Paimon is not a bloodthirsty monster that wants the death of children to manifest in this world, right? Like, it's absolutely nothing like that.
Yeah, I think we should separate always again between good storytelling and good filmmaking and
Yeah.
religious practice. And again, that was my critique earlier, right? Is that this again is forwarding some of this sort of, I think, the ability to demonize people's spiritual practice. Marco, Aaron, other people who've engaged with these goetic spirits, it does allow for it unfortunately continues a trend to allow those kind of demonizations to occur.
It does.
Unfortunately, again,
But the downside
it
is
certain kinds of bigotry.
Like if you showed it the way it really is, it wouldn't make a good movie. It would be too boring.
Exactly.
So they're always going to go toward the sensational stuff.
Which is hilarious, by the way, right? You guys as practitioners for whom these are beings that you've interacted with, like, again, like assuming that they are in fact supernatural entities, which I take it in your experience they are, but somehow like it wouldn't make for good filmmaking, which is something to me that like is bewildering to think of. Like, you have to, in order to make it good, you have to knock a kid's head off. Like, come on, like maybe we could tell these stories in a way that are.
You know what? I'll tell you the story though. When this movie came out, it was the first time I was ever teaching anything, and I was still at Treadwell's at the time here in London, and I was doing this 6-week course, and we did a conjuration at the end of it. Right? I would never do it again. So the thing is that we did it, and the thing is that, like, okay, which of the 72 spirits we're gonna conjure? It's like everybody said Paimon because we watch Hereditary. So I was like, okay,
geez.
you know, I'm not joking,
right? Like, yeah, that to me, like, if I watched this movie and all I knew about Paimons from this movie, that's just like saying, hey, who should we invite in the room? I don't know, a hungry bear. There's something again. There's a hubris in that. Like, that's the thing that strikes me as very, to me, very shocking. If I saw this movie and everything I knew about Paimon was from this movie, the last thing I'd want to have anything to do with would be this. I'm like, I don't know, summon sweet angel face, demon. Like,
I always remember that at the beginning of that course, I asked, right, like at the end of it, like we're gonna, get our skills down as much as possible in 6 weeks. There's gonna be homework as well, but then at the end, you have the choice. We can either do like an angelic conjuration, or we can do a demonic conjuration. Let's do a demon. Let's do Paimon because we watched already. I was like, you okay? Fine by me, right?
Yeah, only because you have experiences with Paimon that are so
exactly.
Right. It's a decision you can make because you've had prior experiences.
Yeah, exactly. This is like, so you're gonna see that it's nothing like the movie, right? That was like the idea behind it. But everybody watched this movie and they were very ready to go, pretty much.
But I would say that again, it's sort of whether our criticisms aside, I'm sure it was all publicity is good publicity. I'm sure that there was an uptick in interest, and again,
there's been a huge.
Thankfully for you guys, right? You guys are there doing the work of kind of catching people when they see a movie like this and get inspired, maybe for the wrong reasons, but then you kind of catch them and maybe redirect them a little bit into a different spiritual direction that isn't, obviously, if this were an entity one could summon, why in the
there are good ways of doing it, and you mean like there was a huge uptick of interest. I don't know if Aaron, you noticed that as well, but it definitely did. It was the year that A Dark Song came out, then this came out. A lot of people start to flock to Facebook groups, and then everything else, right?
One thing I did learn is that most of the people who were inspired by this movie to learn more, those are the ones you wanted to steer away. And for all the reasons Justin just gave, like, if this is the movie you saw, this is what you think Paimon is, then why the hell are you wanting to summon it? Because you think you're some kind of badass?
That's what happens usually, right? And and one of the reasons why I have this huge problem that I'm not very good at marketing myself, because I'm always telling people, well, you know what, everything you watch is not it. Let's do it the proper way. Let's go slow.
But again,
the combination of drugs and him experiencing the same thing that his sister experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, doesn't he develop the same tics she had?
I think he does. Well, because they're all, Paimon needs to be in a male body.
In a body, yeah.
Right, in a male body, and so Charlie's just a stowaway, a temporary vessel.
Mm-hmm.
which again is also sort of, the gender politics of this are also, I think,
And, I guess it's a good enough time to bring that up. This particular subject of, Paimon, male or female. Paimon is very much female.
Yep. I agree.
When the Goetia was written, when the Lemegeton was written, and a lot of the old Solomonic grimoires, there was this fad going through Christianity, and I think it was in Judaism too. You might know this, Justin, that there were no such thing as female spirits or angels. That they were all male.
They're just not gendered in Judaism. They're not. They don't have any gender whatsoever.
Okay, I thought there were old stories about where Moses, where Moses had demanded are there women among you that you need this and this and this, and the angels had to say no. And I know in Christianity they're kind of supposed to be androgynous too, but they lean toward the male, and especially in the demonologies, they made sure every demon was male, and it was a conscious choice, and it does not reflect the spiritual reality of these entities. Paimon is Venus.
Yeah. Which is why
if you look at when you do the evocation of Paimon, it lists what book is it? It's not the Heptameron. I'm spacing which book it is now, but it lists the different kind of poltergeist style happenings that might happen around the circle, or visions that you might get that let you know the spirit has arrived.
Isn't the Ars Goetia?
And for Paimon, you're supposed to see a queen riding on a dromedary, on a camel, because it's Venus. It's female. It's not a male.
Also, it's worth noting that in a lot of the early manuscripts, it's not even Paimon. It's Baimon.
Baimon, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
which, by the way, all these things,
I think it's so much this stuff. Oh, go ahead.
No, please. No, I would say, for instance, this is one of the reasons exactly why back in my days, I started gravitate a lot towards this spirit, because for me, it's a reverberation of Babylon from a Ptolemaic standpoint. Because you think about it, it's Venus, it's the dromedary or the camel, and camel is very connected with Babylon because it's the 5 steps of the camel. It needs to go through the abyss, and then it's a female, and then it comes with a lot of activity that's very noisy, right? Let's put it that it all things that made sense to me as a young Thelemite. Of course, that's nothing to do with it's nothing to do with the two things, right? But it's just okay, I gravitate towards this spirit. Let's try this spirit. Right. You can tell that my early beginnings were very do it yourself.
Also, I just want to say Anne Dowd is one of the most amazing actresses of our time. Her on The Handmaid's Tale, Anne Dowd is just such an incredible actress. Love her. But yeah, and I love this again. This how demons and entities can shift genders as they move through space and time. Right? You think of a deity like Avalokiteshvara. Right, that Avalokiteshvara begins in one gender in India, and by the time they get to China, they've in Japan they've switched genders. That
happens.
Gender is a thing we do and a construct we impose, and to suspect that it would apply to supernatural or divine entities again is just kind of hubristic. But that these entities are certainly going to be much more complex than that.
It depends on the entity too. Like, one of the first things my holy guardian angel taught me was that she doesn't have real gender. She would show me as a female, then she would show me as a male, and then she was telling me she was both. But she settled because of the name that she gave me as a feminine name. That's why I refer to her with the feminine gender. But they're not really, from the human standpoint, male or female the way we understand it.
And I also wonder if the original form of Paimon, we have Paimon and Baimon, if it just wasn't daimon, if the word just wasn't, if it wasn't just daimon, it's so close.
It is close.
And of course, sometimes it's an I, sometimes it's a Y. I just, it's just one of these things. You get these other ones like Beleth and and you just you can see hints of Greek and Aramaic words. And when you try to do the task of reconstructing some of these, you're you can make a big deal about the fact that the names get corrupt through the transmission, but you're like, they're a lot of these are just like, some of these are Hebrew words and Aramaic words, and we can probably reconstruct them from there, Greek words.
It could well be daimon, in the sense that like that's the essence of the daimonis, right? Like the proper essence of it, especially because it's a king. I say it's because, again, for me, came as female, came as male, mostly as female.
Right.
Something.
And I think also in
when
the
I looked,
I think in the Goetia,
Paimon
answers directly to Lucifer, right? In the Goetia.
No, Satan.
Right. So I mean, if they answer directly to Satan or Lucifer or whatever, like daimon would be a pretty good name for it. Like, I don't know. Like again, you can see like you get these layers and layers and accretions of how these things go. That again, it can make a certain kind of sense, etymologically. But
in case it helps, I did research the etymology of Paimon's name, and it actually goes back to an old Greek for it was a word that meant to strike a bell, and Paimon basically means striker.
Do you know the original Greek word?
Yeah, which is the Greek word?
Actually, it comes from a Hebrew word. It's not Greek. It's the same word. I of course I don't remember the Strong's reference, but it's the same word that was used in the Bible to reference striking a bell. To strike.
Paimon? It had to be Paimon.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the on was added later, probably Romanized it, but I don't have my notes in front of me, but it does go back.
Look it up. I'm not no Hebrew word like that's coming to mind. Yeah, I had to look it up. I don't know Hebrew word like that's coming to mind directly.
Let me see if I'll have to move away from the movie just for a second and just see if I can't find my notes on that one, because I give a class on the 12 chief spirits from Abramelin, and of course Paimon is one of those. The 4 kings are important there. So if I can find it, I might be able to tell you.
Let me just check something as well.
It's in my 9th Abramelin class. I still have one part of that class to finish. Let's see.
Also like this whole scene of the seance, like again, like sort of some of the worrying aspects of sort of linking spiritualism and demon worship together. Again, sort of, you always, the Satanic Panic in the 80s, right? Like, oh, seances, it's a way of getting people to worship the devil, or the Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh wow. Okay, I had actually forgotten some of this. Another major clue to Paimon's nature is in the etymology of his name, often mistaken as a Greek word. It turns out Paimon is in fact a Hebrew word meaning bell. It appears in the Torah in the descriptions of the high priest's regalia, which was to include a series of small bells along the hem of the robe.
Yeah, I mean, that's Paimon, but Paimon is the word for bell, but any bell.
Yeah, and then it says, and then I have here that it actually derives from the root pa'am, meaning to strike, and the suffix on in Hebrew means diminutive, so it's little striker.
Yeah, well, yeah, Paimon means Paimon means to ring.
Yes. And I say here, however, in its purest sense, the root word pa'am means to strike, to beat, or to compel. So I think Paimon has the name to strike, to compel, in the sense that you call Paimon as a king to compel other spirits.
Okay.
So literally, when you call Paimon, you're saying, I'm calling the compeller. I'm calling the striker. The guy with the whip. Well, the girl with the whip.
The girl with the whip. It's very, very S&M, right?
Exactly.
Which again,
it's Venus, so of course. Yeah. Very BDSM.
Yeah, I'm checking the shoresh of Paimon, which is Bel, just to see what the shoresh is, because that is a weird word in Hebrew. It's a regular. It's a
this actress.
But yeah, since you were talking about Lucifer before, I should bring up too, just for those following along, that in the grimoires, Lucifer and Satan are considered two separate entities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and the four kings, and Paimon is one of those four: Orions, Paimon, Amamon, and Araton. They all serve. They're the four winds, the four roads, the four directions of the crossroads, and Satan is the man of the crossroads. He's the center. So the four kings serve Satan, and then, like I said, he's separate from Lucifer.
And then this is something that we find also in African diaspora traditions, right? Like you have the Kalfu, the Carrefour, and then in the center you Legba, or
exactly. Well, that's why you come to the American South, especially crossroads are so important, because you had to go down to the crossroads at midnight to make a deal with Satan, because that's where he was. So, like when I do my Goetic ceremonies and I'm working with these guys, I'd like to go to a real crossroads, but I don't have one nearby. But since I host the festivals, the pagan festivals here on my land, I'll go down to the fire circle where they've actually opened the four gates, and that's where I do my work, and I'll call them from those four directions. But it's always Satan in the center and the four kings on the extremities.
Good old Robert Johnson, as a fellow Mississippian.
yeah, absolutely. Do you see a difference between the Goetic spirits, as we just said, and the Orishas or Luas, or do you syncretize them all together? Because in my experience, and I have no experience in initiatory Lukumi or Voodoo, but I work with Michael Berthiaud in Voodoo Gnostic, which is its own thing, right? Of course, but we were seeing some similarities with the Goetic spirits. For you, is the same, or it's something different?
Well, I wouldn't use the word syncretize, because I think that's a specific thing. The Orisha were syncretized with the saints, so they're that relationship exists even today. But in a more broad sense, if you're asking me, do I think like the angels and the spirits of the grimoires are equivalent to the Orisha in the African traditions, then yes, that's what we're dealing with in our Western system, while they're dealing with the Orisha in their system. They're the same species of being, but I'm not equating them. I'm not saying that Baal is Obatala. No. I'm not syncretizing them. But they are all the same. I really do feel, and especially because remember, a lot of my grounding knowledge, not knowledge, but teachings that I received in magic came from Oshani Lele. So I really do see the grimoires as being the Western version of what Santeria and Ptolemy and Voodoo are. So I think we're doing the same things, but they are very different traditions.
So I checked the shoresh of the word for Bel, which is Pa'amon, and it's Pa'am. Or rather, I should say it's Pe, Ayin, Mem, and that the verb form Pa'am is what it means to like keep a beat, like to strike or to knock. But it's related to Pa'am, and also in Ugaritic, Pa'amt, which means to keep time. So it even has a musical aspect to it.
That's kind of interesting, considering that it's Venus.
That was
especially if you were Mayan. Considering they had a whole calendar, the 270 week calendar dedicating to keeping track of Venus.
Yep. Yeah, she was important. That was Ishtar. That was Inanna. That was Mom.
Halel ben Shachar. Halel ben Shachar is the dawn, son of the morning, who becomes Lucifer.
Son of the dawn. Yeah, well, that's who Isaiah was referring to when he said, "Oh, Shachar, how thou hast fallen." Oh, not Shachar. Oh, Hallel, how thou hast fallen.
Halel, Halel ben Shachar is Halel is the son of Shachar, the dawn.
Exactly. Yeah, I love blowing people's mind when I point out that ancient that ancient Canaanite myth where they had to battle Hillel to drag him down so that the sun could rise, and how that is literally what's being depicted in the book of Revelation between Michael and Samuel.
Yeah, you're right,
The
actually.
sun
And
battling
also, like
demons
Isaiah
for
9 is not
supremacy.
about the devil; it's about Nebuchadnezzar II.
It's about what?
It's about Nebuchadnezzar II. The entire oracle of Isaiah 9 is targeted on Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah,
Like,
he
you
was
think
talking
you'll be
about a
as you'll
king.
think you'll be as powerful as the gods? No, I'll drag you
You'll
down to
fall
Sheol.
just like Hillel did. Yep. Because the whole story of Hillel, there are other similar stories, like Ashtar, and they're like, even if you go to the other side of the Fertile Crescent with Inanna and Ishtar, when she went down into the underworld, her husband tried to take her place on the throne, and they make a very big deal that his head could not reach the backboard, the headrest, his feet could not reach the ground. He was too small. He could not fit that throne.
That throne, yeah.
And so when the goddess comes back, she has to drag him down off of that throne to take her place.
Right. And also, he didn't do morning rituals for her. That's why that's part of the reason why she drags him back, because everyone else she encounters had done morning rituals for her to keep her alive in the underworld, and he just moved on.
He just wanted her. Yeah, he wanted the power. That's all he gave a damn about. So she's like, all right, well, you know what? You can take my place down below. Bitch.
Dumuzi, he gets drugged down
and cut in pieces.
Yeah, the Gala demons get him.
Yep.
And also, right, my professor, James Boley, points out this is also mirrored again in the Esther story. Esther, Ishtar, Mordecai, Marduk. That
yes.
Oh, very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, he makes a really good point about how we can read the Esther story as a terrestrial story. We can also read it as a competition.
As a cosmic story. Yeah, you're right.
Yep. That's a very Zoharish way of viewing the Bible. You got your literal interpretation, but then there's this deep spiritual interpretation.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we went to very dark places in the movie, which kind of, mirrors what we were discussing here about, the descent in the underworld of Inanna and Ishtar.
And you get a sense that the Paimon of the film is really just breaking her down. That it's using grief and work and all of that to beat her down, basically to open her up in this very Augustinian way to kind of doing what has to be done to transfer power.
In order to
yeah.
And again, this is a very I would say a very Augustinian film in the sense that it follows a very Augustinian demonology and how demons operate. That it's about deception and trickery and who's really in control and what's real and what's false. And those are all elements that Augustine makes very clear in De Cabete about how demons, Christians understand demons to operate.
Yeah, I think he really tapped into the psychological aspect of this. Because like I said, in the real world, when this goes wrong for people, you don't come into a temple and find someone torn to bits in the middle of their circle because their robe accidentally passed over the edge of the circle. But you will find people whose lives fall apart and they get addicted to drugs or lose their jobs.
It's a mental unraveling. It's depression.
It's like being addicted to a drug. It'll just tear you apart. And these demons, they'll put goggles on you and they'll make you see the world in a way. Because again, they want to stay in control. They don't want you to be put in a superior position over them. They want you on your knees, just like the old pagan gods did.
And that's in the sense where she is, right? And this is an entire ploy. Like this character knows what she's doing. This is not a
absolutely.
I found a seance. You found a seance. Like,
she was like dragged.
She's a plant.
There, pretty much.
Yeah, she's a plant
there.
Yep. Well, see, this is what I was saying earlier, that I think this movie just missed being truly great, because when you watch this movie right up until the very end, you get a feeling that all of this is really kind of happening in the main character's head.
Yeah.
That you're seeing her break down. And then the director came out afterwards and said, no, there really was a cult. all these things really were happening. And I remember at the time, everyone was just like, well, you just screwed up your own movie, dude. This was a wonderful psychological thriller. But you said, nope, no psychology at all. It's just a cult. And he literally sucked the air out of his own movie by saying that.
Well, a good thing the author's dead. So it doesn't matter.
I didn't know he passed away.
No.
Did
Not Ari Aster. I'm making a reference to the philosophical conception of the author's dead, right? The author doesn't get to control the movie when it's out, right? Like once the book and the narrative's out,
once it's out, yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
We can have our own headcanon, right? For us, it can be what we want.
Hey,
honestly,
Ari Aster does not get to tell you what the movie means to you.
Whenever the kid threw himself out the window, it just should have ended there. It should have never had the final shot.
I feel the same way about The Shining, the Kubrick version, where there's the one scene where the spirits let him out of the pantry, and that's the only scene in the whole movie where it only could have been spirits. And every other scene, it could have been anything else. It could have completely been in his head, but that for me, that scene ruins. I mean, I would if I could take a scene out of the movie.
I know this is off topic of what we're talking about, but have you ever heard of the Wendy theory?
Yeah.
No, what is that?
Dude,
I haven't.
Go to YouTube, look up Shining and Wendy theory. It explains the whole movie, including that scene when they let him out of the. It explains everything.
It is a great theory.
It's amazing.
Okay.
It's basically a theory that Wendy was the crazy one the whole time, and all the weird stuff you see is happening in her head.
Okay.
She was the one abusing Danny. She was the one going nuts. And if you watch the whole theory, it makes perfect sense.
And that's a take. I'm curious. I'm curious now, right?
Like all the little things where Kubrick would, like furniture would be missing from one scene to another, or the layout of the hotel seemed to shift and change from one scene to the other. It all makes sense through the Wendy theory. It's amazing.
Okay.
And also this sequence again, like the whole idea that she's not really a practitioner. Of course she is. She's a plant, but again, sort of the luring them in, luring her in. This sequence reminds me, by the way, I was showing this to I was showing Marco this. This is a copy of Jamblichus I got, Aaron, from 1549, signed by someone who would have deeply disliked this scene. The signature of Harry Houdini.
Yeah, he would have not liked this one.
Yeah.
Although I think if Houdini saw this, I think he might I don't know if I saw
he would have
this.
Been interested.
He'd have had a task on his hands.
Yeah, it definitely does have an old spiritism vibe to it. Rather than going the whole Solomonic route, they just kind of went with this simpler seance kind of thing.
Right, because they're luring her in, right? It's sort of the like I get the hook in your jaw with the seance, and I.
Right. Like imagine if she had walked in and there had been a circle and a bunch of people wearing robes and swords. No, she would have run.
Yeah.
But this just seems like a nice old lady doing a little seance.
Which also, like it's part of the tropes of the, those 80s tropes about like horror movies, right?
Hey, we're just going to innocently talk to spirits at first, but then it's really Satanism. Yeah.
I mean, it's literally like this here, right? It's literally it.
Yeah, it's like, hey kids, you want to buy some Satanism? Like, just take this flyer, come play Dungeons and Dragons, and then we'll summon Paimon afterwards.
Can you see her going back to the coven? Did you give her the pamphlet?
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to give her the pamphlet. Oh, you come on! The pamphlet was the most important part.
That was the most important thing.
We should maybe record our version of this movie, like a parody.
Hey, yeah, it can be a little mystery science theater 3000 sometimes.
Yeah,
that's fine by me.
Yeah, and it's at that moment that you like need to break up with your friend. Like it's something. There's emotional manipulation here, right? There's kind of love bombing versus like, here's a little, in the click.
That's the moment where you say, enough. It's been nice, but now we move on and do something else, right?
Yeah. You realize there's like emotional manipulation going on.
But she can't. She's caught in her grief, and all she knows is that she was promised contact. Well, that's how Spiritism worked back in the day, promising grieving people contact with their loved ones. That's how you hook them.
Oh yeah, not just an entire generation of people in World War I. And it was, I'm not saying that it was all a scam, but I think that it was an excellent. If you wanted to scam people, the 1920s was the time to do it in the Spiritism movement.
Good time to do it.
And Houdini hated it. And not because he completely disbelieved in the world of spirits, he was open to it, but he despised seeing people's grief weaponized against them to extort them.
Absolutely, I hate it myself. That's why even though I'm sure he could be an asshole, I always supported and liked James Randi and those guys, because I cannot stomach these fake psychics running around weaponizing and monetizing people's grief.
But I was about to say the same. It doesn't change much in 100 years, because right now, and Aaron will know it very well, what sells the most is still when people sell healing. Like, oh, you can use magic to heal, right? Like, and I'm not talking about Reiki or energy healers. I'm talking about start doing these magical practices, because maybe you're gonna heal, you're gonna feel better, or do this sigil, whatever. I hate it, and I've been speaking about it, and I'm getting shit on all the time.
Of course you are.
That on
YouTube, it's part of like this sort of mercantile. Yeah, I'm not going to do something unless I get something back, as opposed to you need to do a lot of work to transform yourself, and that's going to be real hard for most of the time, as opposed to like, if I just burn something, I'll get something. It's like no authentic spiritual practice is going to be horse trading.
No,
right?
There's been this trend. Look at this image is a bit a lot. But there's this trend that's been going. I'm not gonna name names, but it's all about it's easy. Magic can be easy. Here's a sigil. Look at the sigil. Everything's gonna be better. Aaron knows exactly what I'm talking about. But we're not gonna name names. And it's like, guys, that's
what I was gonna say. Two things that'll get you attacked the quickest is suggesting, number one, that magic is real. And I'm talking about among occultists. If you start talking like magic is a real thing, they get angry. And number two, that it takes work, that you have to work, and that it can be unpleasant. That will get you shouted down really fast.
Everybody wants
unmarketable, right? It becomes difficult to sell it at that point, and people don't want to.
And that's what it is. They want to sell it. Yep.
Yeah. Or rather, they just want to buy something.
You can do it too.
I think it's the opposite. They just want to buy something. They just want to go to the Tesco, to the Walmart, and they want to buy, a thing. And when you buy a thing, you get it. And now it's my power. And
go to Walmart, nothing. They want to order it off of Amazon and have it delivered.
Right? Yeah. It's spirituality and philosophy just don't work like that. Like, it's a ton of work.
Marco probably gets the same thing I get, where people will contact you in IM, and that's exactly what it is. They want you to answer all their questions for free right now. And if you don't, they start attacking you.
Yep, it happens all the time. I was speaking with Justin before we started recording. It got worse in the last year, I think. Like, it really is bad at the moment. And I don't think there's a way of dealing with it, to be fair. It's just what it is at the moment, right? There's a lot of people, a lot of entitlement, and I wish I could go back and not being a public-facing occultist. Let's put it like, I'm just going to say that. Right?
Well, the thing is, my theory is that it's always been this way. It's just with social media, we can see it easier. But if you read Agrippa, if you read a lot of the old Matt Trithemius, and they all talked about the same thing. All the posers and fakes and frauds, and people want everything for free, and only a very few people are willing to work for it. But you know what? We're only interested in those very few. So I'm not concerned with the masses. I want the serious practitioners.
And to be fair, there are. Like it's like you said, there are not
Absolutely
many,
are.
but there are.
I think there's more today than there ever has been.
Possibly, you're right. Yeah,
I really do believe it. But that also means there's correspondingly more hangers-on and posers.
Maybe movies like this did help, to get more people.
It's a numbers game, like anything else, right?
Yeah.
It's a numbers game. Any distribution, there's going to be a statistical bell curve.
Yep.
Just I'm sure it follows. I'm sure it follows a bell curve like everything else. You're going to have people on either a couple of standard deviations on either side of that equation. So I think that's just the math of numbers games, any numbers game.
Yeah, it's just how it works.
Also, again, like going back to the Augustinian trope, right? She just had this very terrifying dream that's propelling her to initiate this seance. Classic Augustinian, right? The demones make impressions on your fantasia, on your imagination, and they're primarily able to do that in dreams because your defenses are lower, and they can basically like manipulate your fantasia inside of your dream
absolutely.
state. And so again, this is like a textbook Augustinian demonology.
And really, that concept's far older too, because the concept of using dreams to communicate with spirits goes pretty much as far back as working with spirits goes.
I'm sure it goes back further than I'm sure it goes way further back than written language goes. Göbekli Tepe may have been an incubation site. We don't know, but yeah, we certainly have evidence of that in Sumerian Babylonian religion.
Yeah, but they knew how this worked.
I mean, it's human birthright. Like working with spirit, it's been there forever, right? Like
exactly.
It's what humans do. We speak with the unseen.
And Justin, you talked earlier about that, the repetitiveness inside the movie. You can see these same patterns happening again and again. That's another thing you learn very quickly working with spirits. They are all OCD to an extreme. That's why we call it ritual magic, because they want you to do the same things. It's like having an autistic child. There are rituals and routines you have to do with them to get them to work with you. And that's love repetitiveness.
And that's true of exorcisms too. People don't really realize how repetitive exorcism is until you actually until you look at an actual Roman ritual and you're like, it's just 3 pages repeated over and over again for months. They're terribly boring aside from the demonic part.
Well, and again, if you were to make the movie The Exorcist but show a real exorcism, it would have flopped.
Because it would have been just them repeating the same 3 pages for 6.5 months or something.
Right. While the person just was over in a day, does nothing.
Yeah. Today, nothing happened.
Yeah, I remember when I was very young, I was able to get the Rituale Romanum, like the original Vatican book. I was so excited about it. Like, now I'm gonna have this. Like, it's gonna be amazing. And then I read it. Like, what? Boring. What is this?
It's like, I've got grimoires that are more complex than this.
Exactly.
Which are interesting because many of the grimoires are based on those exorcistic rituals. At least
big time.
Pre Rituale Romanum, right? Because part of the reason why the Rituale Romanum was made was to systematize all the exorcistic rituals that were floating around medieval and early modern Europe, because so many of them were being used for spirit work.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that's what
manuals ended up on the index, which is I think people are often shocked to know that these exorcistic rituals books would actually end up on the index prohibitorum, because they were just used for spirit work more than they were actually used for exorcisms.
I say this in my classes. The exorcist back in the medieval era and the Renaissance era, he was a faith healer essentially. So he had to do what worked for his community, and he didn't concern himself with dogma and what Mother Church said. And that's what launched the Inquisitions, because the church got tired of these guys doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Heresy.
Well, and also they were up to the, half of them were up to the, business of like, the clerical necromantic underground. So they weren't totally above board either. They would they'd knock on any door that would answer.
Well, like I said, they were the shamans of their day.
Yeah, absolutely.
They had to serve their community. Whoosh. That moment when muggles see real magic for the first time and it flips them right out.
Yeah, this get
Yeah,
very
it's
intense.
also why for the importance of ritual experts.
Exactly, right?
Oh yeah.
Don't do this at home. It's like
no, that's how people get obsessed by these creatures, because they don't have any training, they don't have any safety equipment, they don't have any,
It's what you said at the beginning, right? It's like, imagine you have no experience with electricity and you try to redo the electrical system of your house. You're gonna die. So that's how
Exactly.
it is, right?
Exactly.
And also think about thinking of trauma as a cycle, right? Grief as a cycle. It repeats itself over and over. That at some level she's repeating herself. The trauma is recycling itself.
It's like how we're coming back to the model again.
Mm-hmm.
They keep reminding us of that model.
Right.
I think I'm a little past it. Now I'm in the. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm at 120:38.
Let me see.
Right.
Yeah.
And for folks who missed it, there on the wall, written in Latin letters for whatever reason, was the phrase "liftoach pandemonium," which it's a weird combination of Greek and Latin. Liftoach means to open, and pandemonium means pandemonium.
It's Latin, right? Yeah, exactly.
Pandemonium is Greek.
The city of demons.
All demons.
All demons,
yeah. And also to remind folks, pandemonium as a word was invented by John Milton.
Yep.
He invented that
I didn't
word.
know that.
Yeah, it did not exist. It occurs for the first time in Paradise Lost.
Because isn't that what he named the main city? I know there was a city named Dis, but wasn't another one named Pandemonium, or is that just what it's called?
Which is a perfect name for the capital city of hell. All the demons.
Yeah.
But yeah, Liftoach Pandemonium, to open Pandemonium.
All demons.
Also, it's weird to me when they write Hebrew and Latin letters. I don't understand the point. Like even if they just wanted to be creepy, writing in Hebrew would have somehow even been more creepy.
It would have been much better.
Yeah, much more alarming. Considering Charlie,
they were trying
Hebrew
not to link this
Paimon
to
does.
Jewish mysticism, but keep it Christian, so hence the Latin.
Yeah, or Greek rather. Well, pandemonium is a weird word because it's two Greek words with a Latin ending.
Yeah, Latin ending.
Yeah.
Ending.
I think in Greek it'd be in pandemones, not
it would be pandemones, right? Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, you notice how often we keep running into words that are from one language, but then they'll kind of add Latin aspects to it or Greek aspects to it.
That's what I call the Western esoteric telephone tradition.
Yes.
Then again, you find this a lot in the Clavicula Salomonis when you see, in the Conjuration, at some point you find Angelon Tonteu, an angel of the god, right? And it's like, and people that don't know think, I had these people telling me this. Oh, this is Barbara's name. It's like, you just don't need Greek. You just don't know Greek. So it's like,
yeah, exactly. And a lot of those names are that way.
I like this scene here where she begins to smash the model. Like, this is the moment where things really begin to accelerate rapidly. Like, that smashing of the model, I think, is an important symbolic gesture. But it's funny in manuscripts of the Almadel, where the Almadel has to have the word tetragrammaton written on the Almadel. The Hebrew manuscripts, you would think they would have Yod He Vav He, the actual tetragrammaton. They just spell the word tetragrammaton in Hebrew letters.
Believe it or not, that's something that pops up in modern occultism a lot. Like, I see people that they want to take any grimoire where tetragrammaton is mentioned and replace it with Yod He Vav He. And I have to tell them that's not how they did that. Tetragrammaton is a divine name. It's not just a stand-in for the four Hebrew letters. It actually is a name of God in this system. It just happens to be Greek.
Right. And it's just like, from the Orthodox Church. But I remember reading it, and I'm like, tetragrammaton. Reading it in Hebrew. I'm like, they just literally they just wrote it out in Greek, in Hebrew letters. Like, okay. Who am I to judge?
I tell people that tetragrammaton is just the Greek version of Hashem. And Hashem is also a name of God.
Right. Or at least a title. But yeah.
Right. Well, they're all titles.
Right. Well, Yod He Vav He is theoretically the name. Is like
the name, right? You just said we don't know how to pronounce it.
Proper name, so it's just the pronunciation's been lost since the destruction of the Second Temple.
I mean, I know this really doesn't have anything to do with his origins as an ancient Palestinian storm god, but I always say that Yod He Vav He is more of a formula than a name at this point.
Yeah. I think it's
definitely
many things
in the Western esoteric tradition, it's definitely a formula, right? It's the way.
Especially in the Golden Dawn.
Right.
And in Telema, because we inherited or stolen it. So.
Yeah, I think that name is many things to many people, and no one has a monopoly on it.
Nope.
So I often hear some of my Kabbalist friends being like, how dare they? I'm like, hey, man, cat's out of the bag, brother. Like, you don't get to own this. It's not the way it works.
Exactly. Well, I like to point out that in the 1200s, the Kabbalah was founded by a meeting of Jewish, pagan, and Christian minds.
Christians, yeah.
It was never purely a Jewish tradition.
There's certainly syncretistic elements for sure. I mean, Shekhinah is definitely, mirroring the Marian cult.
But I figure, you look at the 1200s in Spain, that was a melting pot. Those people had no problem with each other. They didn't care if you were Jewish or Christian or pagan. They all sat around the table and talked shop with each other. And that's why we got the Kabbalah, and it's why we got Hermeticism, and it's why we got Rosicrucianism, and all that stuff came out of there.
Yeah, one of the unsung heroes in the history of Western esotericism who does not get his day in the sun is Alfonso the Wise, the King of Spain at that time.
The King of Spain, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Alfonso the Wise, again, if we want to have some Gnostic saints, some people we really want to celebrate as important figures in all this, Alfonso the Wise should be really high on that list because he's responsible for Picatrix. He's responsible for the environment in which Kabbalah was created. Really,
I never looked at it that way, but you're absolutely right. It's like Emperor Rudolph.
Yeah, the second, right.
Where he had all the alchemists and he had Edward Kelly and John Dee and all them hanging out with him, and was very open to occultism and mysticism.
Well, he also had Edward Kelly thrown out of a window, but or not thrown out of a window, but facilitated Kelly falling out of a window.
For the record, that may have been fabricated.
I mean,
there's a lot of documents that have been in Czech for a very long time, and they're only now starting to be translated. And we've learned that Kelly actually lived a very long and prosperous life in Rudolph's court. There's even records left behind by his daughter talking about her dad. So it may very well be that because when Kelly was in Rudolph's court, he was being constantly harassed by the Queen's spy master.
Right. Oh, to report back.
And because he constantly wanted information, he wanted Kelly to be an English spy for them, and he kept refusing. So it's entirely possible they fabricated the story of his death in order for it to get back to England, and so they would leave him alone.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to see the evidence.
Yeah, this is all new, and I can't even point you to a source because, like I said, I'm getting this secondhand from people who have been translating these Czech texts. I don't think any of it's been published yet. So, but if you guys are interested, look up Terry Burns on Facebook, and she knows a lot of that stuff.
I'm gonna make another note. I'm getting out with a lot of notes for tonight.
She's really big into conspiracy theories surrounding Dee's work. Like, was William Shakespeare there for part of it? He might have been. And there's all sorts of cloak and dagger spy stuff that goes on in Dee's journals. It's really fascinating.
Right. Well, that's all the people they talk about that, Dee was a spy and on the continent. I'm like, if you were an English citizen, then you were a spy on the continent, whether you wanted to be or not. Just like, I had an old friend of mine who used to be Air Force intelligence, and he says, if you are a nonprofit, if you're a nonprofit organization operating anywhere else in the world, you work for the CIA, whether you want to or not.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like,
yeah.
If you're an American NGO, you work for the CIA.
Certain things
also
never
love
change.
This here, right? This connection that's been made between her and the book, and eventually between her husband and the book. That you have this sympathetic relationship between the book and the people, which is good. And again, good classical sympathetic magic.
Yeah, especially in the grimoire world, because those books were seen to be inhabited by the spirits who were listed in them. So,
right. As Kika
I've even heard
out,
tales of where the church would put all these books together in a pile and burn them, and then they would describe hearing screams coming out of the fire.
Yeah. That Kiefer points out that books of magic are the magic of books. Like the book as a material object, as you said, Aaron, was not just a book with magic in it. It was a book,
but it was a book made of magic.
Yeah, made of magic.
It was alive itself.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so, and that's also even more interesting to think about at some level, considering the books are actually literally made of parchment. They're composed of animal flesh. That these are, they were themselves objects that once lived, now living again.
That's why today we still use parchment to make talismans and things, because it's not really stated in the grimoires, but the reason is because it was a living animal. You're literally incorporating the spirit of that animal into the magic.
Yeah, and even uterine parchment of animals that are never born.
Oh yeah, that's a big.
A fascinating kind of requirement. Uterine parchment.
It's also why you're supposed to make candles out of beeswax. You know why that's preferred over paraffin, because the beeswax it's created by these living creatures, and it has life-giving properties in it. It's got nutrients in it. It's a living thing that you're making your candles out of.
I love that scene where it's very clear that Charlie had been making the diorama the whole time. That all the things that she was producing was actually prophetic. They weren't just odd objects. They were, in fact, again, destiny, right? That she had literally been, when she cut the head off the bird, she was creating herself, her future self. He's like, that diorama they just showed were all the things that she had been making.
Yeah,
you're right.
Like you said, it's all foreshadowing. Everything in this movie is part of the ritual.
The ritual, right. Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a great point.
There's one
Aaron.
ritual taking place of this entire movie. Right. But it's not at all like you would see in a grimoire. It's very.
I mean, it's completely. Yeah, that's the point, right? I love the movie, but if you're watching this movie thinking that you're learning magic, no, there's.
But arguably for it. Stephen King was good at that. Like, he could take something that's occult, but then he could take a spell and then show through the course of his story how that spell is being enacted by otherwise mundane events taking place.
Yeah.
So I got to give him credit for that kind of creativity in the writing, you know?
How about these welcome mats, guys? You see the welcome mats with the great Goetic sigils composed into them? I bet you could make some welcome mats like that on Etsy and make some money.
And they would sell.
Why in the world those are written in Sanskrit or Devanagari?
In Sanskrit, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
a little confusing to me in the same way that the Reiki symbols
So, the image of Paimon is
Yeah,
King Paimon
there's one part of it missing. It repeats 4 times, but there's only 3 on this, what they used in the movie.
Yeah. King Paimon is a male dusk, which is not, as we said before.
Hey, if you want me to ruin this for you for the rest of your life, look at Paimon's seal.
Yeah, I know. It's wrong.
You are looking at a sled bearing down on you with 4 angry men shaking their fists at you in that seal. You'll never be able to see it any other way once you see it that way.
Yeah, it's ruined now. Thank you.
That lives in your head rent-free now. I gotta hand it to their visual storytelling here.
Yeah.
No dialogue, just everything you need to know right there.
And also the horrifying realization that this whole thing with the seance and all that was a setup.
Yeah.
Like he was being, I think we've all been manipulated at some point in our life. But the moment you realize you're the mark.
Yeah, it's a bad vibe.
Yeah. The old saying, right? If you don't know who the mark at the table is, it's you. And she just realized it's you.
You exactly.
Pretty much. You see how nothing has happened so far that couldn't be completely inside his mother's head and his as this is going on. And we could just be dealing with what do they call them? Unreliable narrators.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that she's undergoing sort of grief-induced psychosis and
and it's and she's transmitting it to her son, folio do.
Yeah.
But the director said, nope, that's not what was happening. So all of y'all can quit theorizing.
Yeah, but like I said, no one, including the director and the writer, have the last say on what a piece of art means.
Yeah.
Once it's out in the world, it's out in the world.
Yep.
I agree, because I choose to see it the way I saw it when I watch it, except for the final scene, which indicates that, yes, this was all real. I choose to ignore that final scene.
And also, I wonder, the Freudian in me kicks in with the 3 layers of the house, this
oh yeah,
this attic and the middle layer, and then sort of where everything burns at the first floor. Again, you kind of bring in the sort of Freudian.
Yeah, you're right. Actually,
I found a Freudian reading with that as well. I'm often slow to do that.
You'd think this environment would be the basement if that were the case, though.
Exactly right. You would think that, but in the same way that in Psycho, right? That the mother, that the living mother is at the top of it. Norman dressed as the mother, but the mother, a superego, is driven by the id in the basement. That this can be also like this is the real superego. This is who really is in control.
Yeah.
Is what's in the attic.
By the way, once again, we should say that this has nothing to do with actual Solomonic magic or grimoire magic, I want to call it.
I think it's here that she gets fully possessed.
Yeah, I think that's right.
This is where everything ramps up right here to 11.
also appreciate the fact that Paimon is trying to infest the body of someone named Peter, the rock of the church. Like he's going to become the rock of the new religion.
That's a good observation, actually.
Yeah, good point.
Also appreciate the fact they have a picture of Nietzsche in a high school classroom. You see him there on the left, next to like Abraham Lincoln and Woodrow Wilson.
Right.
There's a picture of Frederick Nietzsche on the far left. What a weird guy to be up there with Abraham Lincoln. I do appreciate that as a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Something's very wrong with this world. No 16-year-old boy should be exposed to Frederick Nietzsche.
Yeah, I mean it's a recipe for destruction, right? How you get 4chan.
Yeah, there are very few things that I'm not pro censorship about much, but I always hope that young boys don't find Frederick Nietzsche. I've never found a 16-year-old boy quoting Nietzsche that I can trust. And I also say, Marco, I've had similar experiences, unfortunately, with teenage boys in Crowley. The Nietzsche to Crowley pipeline.
Yeah, I mean it's real. It's very real.
Nietzsche to Crowley to Evola pipeline. It's like, oh god, here we are again.
I mean, to be fair, Crowley did name him as Nietzsche as a Gnostic saint, right?
Yeah.
Because of course it's the Uberman and the idea of
will.
Yeah, right.
Will
to power.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, which is also what got us the alt-right. That's
which I will say is I don't think a necessity of that logic at all.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
But it's as you say, it's an easy pipeline to fall, and people like easy solutions to complex problems.
Right. It's a way to feel like you have a lot of power real fast.
Yeah.
Without having
you know what? I'll tell you that. I'll be very honest with you. Like maybe I'm wrong because I'm one of the few Telemites that think like this. So I don't know. Maybe I got it wrong, and I am this weird, different thing, right? But no, I think I'm right. They're wrong.
And also, again, I think that the gender stuff of like hysterical woman, like those kinds of elements are also worth interrogating. How, and of course, he's about to learn the dangerous lesson of not listening to the woman who's saying, "I think some supernatural stuff is going on here. You need to listen."
Mm-hmm.
He's about to learn that lesson the hard way. The hot
Very
way.
bad. Yeah. When was this movie out? Was it like 2018, right? Yeah, 17, 18, something like that.
Sounds about right. Because it seems like it was before the pandemic.
Yeah, it was definitely before the pandemic. Now I'm thinking that, there was those years that a lot of these movies came out, and I wonder what was going on in the world. Because, think about this. You have this one, you have, of course, The Dark Song, you have The Babadook, which is another interesting movie.
Yeah, it's a good one. There was a brief fascination with the occult that went on with these movies, even Midsommar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Midsommar's another. Also, this, it would be interesting to see what was sort of in the air at the time. Early Trump years, right?
Yeah, they were the Trump years. You're correct.
Yeah, the early Trump years.
They were the leading up and the Trump years.
Right.
Leading up to and the Trump years.
Yeah.
Which is also maybe, like Duginism, if you think about it as well. Like it became a big thing, right? So
one thing that is true about magic historically is that it doesn't flourish in places where everyone's happy. It flourishes in places where people feel powerless, where they're poor, where they're, they need some kind of feeling of control over their lives,
Yeah, you typically don't people don't pray when they're fed and warm and comfortable and cozy. You pray in the foxhole. And so maybe these movies are an sort of an emergence of the anxiety and the sense
of those years,
whatever.
Yep.
Yeah.
I only got words, so it's gonna be.
It's just like you had the same thing in the 70s with the Satanic Panic, and you had Rosemary's Baby and Omen, and you had that little brief and The Exorcist, a fascination with the occult.
And the huge uptick in the interest in the occult and witchcraft at the very beginning of the pandemic. I mean, again, feeling isolated, alone, powerless.
People were willing to use spells to try to keep the virus out of their house. I'll tell you that.
I'm sure
a lot of people had talismans made and stuff.
I'm sure.
They were coming to you. You had a lot of new customers at the time because of that.
I actually made a point of not selling talismans for that because it would have been too easy to make just a cheap, easy to sell talisman and profit off of people's fear, and I just would not do that. So I just kind of backed off on all, and I wasn't going to try to monetize the pandemic. That just felt wrong.
It's admirable because a lot of people did.
Yeah, a lot of people did. I was about to say, right.
Also, you get the sense here that, again, we don't know who's in control. Who's motivating her to get him to burn it? Whether she knows that it's switched over to him, or whether she thinks she can't do it and only he can do it.
Well, I never got the impression she knew that would happen.
Yeah, it's just not clear to me. I'm again
I think it's Paimon. Paimon is manipulating things right now, or not manipulating things, and burning him was punishment for her for trying to burn the book.
Mm-hmm. Or just need to eliminate him. He has to be out of the picture for the whole
the rest of the ritual.
The rest.
Yeah, because what's one of the steps of indoctrination into a cult?
Yeah, cut you off from your loved ones,
separating you from your family and friends and social support network,
and love bombing you like this. I love you so much.
There's one right now. I love you.
Yeah. It's love bombing and isolation.
Yeah.
Again, this just tells me that something. There's something about this I just don't trust. I'm not sure who's speaking here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the demon, right? She's been taken over by now.
It seems to me, and also the fact that
it's probably not as simple as, well, is it her or Paimon? Someone who is obsessed by a spirit or even possessed by a spirit. You're kind of talking to both of them.
Yeah.
The spirit infects their personality almost like a virus. It's not too distinct. There's not a wall between the two the way it's shown in the movies. Of course, we're watching a movie, so that's kind of a moot point.
Yeah,
I do like that practical effect they do to show the movement of the demon. It's that mirror, that kind of halo kind of prism effect. It's a really nice, I think, a practical effect that is very subtle and very effective. You don't need some kind of Evil Dead kind of thing.
You know what? I just saw it. Did you see that flash of light go by when she stood there and then her face changed?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
That's the moment I think that Paimon took her completely. I think that shock of watching her husband burn was it for her. I think she's gone now.
I mean, she's definitely gone pretty soon.
Yeah. I mean, not there. This is now Paimon 100%. It is not her anymore. She died right there, watching her husband die.
And then again, knowing how actually engaging Paimon is, it's a bit of a bad rap for the spirit.
It is.
I say this about Pazuzu and The Exorcist, how Pazuzu is actually a protector of children. That's the one thing in antiquity he's known for, is a protector of children. He never possesses children. He's he's used to defend children from Lamashtu, and the fact that
I was
most
about to say
people now know
Lamashtu is
Pazuzu,
the baby killer.
right? And his amulets are used to run her off because she's. And now the only thing that Pazuzu is known for is possessing Reagan in The Exorcist. I'm like,
possessing a little girl.
Yeah.
Did you know that new movie they just came out with? They came out with a new sequel.
I haven't heard about it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, they just did. And guess who the big bad in that movie is?
Don't tell
Lamashtu.
Oh, is it Lamashtu? That makes more sense.
They actually brought Lamashtu out. Yep.
Okay, good. So that at least then it's like, okay, yeah, we got a baddie now, like a real baddie,
right?
You know, not to say that Pazuzu didn't do bad stuff. He was the demon of like the southwest wind, and he was responsible for all kinds of like sickness and stuff. But he wasn't a good guy. But at least in a sense, he didn't hurt little girls, and in fact, he did the opposite of that. And so it's I always feel bad.
See, this gets back in what we were saying. Originally, demon didn't mean evil spirit. Yes, they were dangerous. Yes, they could make you sick or hurt you, but they could also be employed for That's like the Testament of Solomon. You know, all of his people were being made sick and other ills and stuff from these spirits, and then he just went and rounded them all up and put them to work.
Yeah.
And again, even Jesus is accused of this, right? This survived into the New Testament. You know, you're using one demon to do something against another demon. Jesus is even accused of it, which was again a common practice. These demons have sympathies and antipathies, and you can use them. These spirits have these antipathies, and you can use the antipathies against other demons.
Yeah. Apparently, speaking of Jake Kent, he said he had found plenty of evidence. Why did I say plenty of? He had found evidence that the older versions of the legends of Solomon and which one was it? Asmodeus? Was it Asmodeus? Well, anyway, it was King Solomon and the King of Demons
in that text.
And he says in the older texts, they were actually friendly to one another. That they had
friendly. They're kind of friendly in the Talmud. The Talmud story,
where he supposedly Asmodeus had brought King Solomon the book of magic that then became the key of Solomon that we all use. You know, speaking from legend.
Yeah, I mean, at least in the Talmud, they're chummy. I mean.
Yeah, and it wasn't until King Solomon himself betrayed the king of demons. That's when the whole thing happened, when he kicked Solomon off the throne and took his place for a while.
Or he takes that ring off.
Yep.
And rules over Israel for several years, according to the Talmud.
Yep. I think that's the legendary explanation for why Solomon went bad, quote unquote, and lost the favor of God, because it wasn't really him. It was actually Asmodeus posing as him.
Yeah, it's the.
This is a part of the legend that I definitely should speak about next time I'm in a Masonic lodge. I would definitely, like a lot of Freemasons will say, "What? King Solomon was what?"
Yeah, the Talmud gives a really complicated account of and also even the Testament of Solomon, right? Depends on if you read which recension, right? There are at least 3 recensions, and they give quite different stories. And even recension C is more of a straightforwardly magical recension. Like, here's how to do it, as opposed to here's the demons responsible for it. So it even depends on what recension.
Yeah, because in the originals you didn't have seals or anything, but didn't recension C add seals for the spirits? I forget now.
Yeah, it depends on the manuscript. Yeah, depends on the manuscript.
Yeah, I credit that with being the origin of the Solomon. I mean, there's a lot of different underpinnings to it, but this idea that Solomon took these spirits and put them to work, I think that's the whole basis of the tradition.
Yeah.
Trying to mimic that and trying to mimic Jesus going down into hell. Those seem to be the 2 things that the Grimoire authors were most interested in. Now you see her here, right?
Yeah, in the back. Yeah, look at that. There she is.
First time I saw this, I missed her up on the ceiling there, and it was really freaky when she suddenly pops out.
And then there's also, the naked person there,
right? Which I think is Paimon, or some manifestation of.
I thought that was his sister's body, without the head.
And then you see the head.
Oh, there's someone standing there too.
If you're trying to run away from someone, never run to the attic.
There she is.
Just that really dreadfully terrifying scene of her floated up to the attic door, banging her head against it, just showing like the sort of insanity of demonic possession.
I gotta admit, like I never experienced nothing remotely like this, but like if it goes bad, it's about depression, it's about addiction, it's about gloom, and I mean, at least that's what I've never myself, but I've seen it happen to people. Honestly, if I would see something like this, maybe I wouldn't be here. Like, the world is far too scary out there.
Yeah, and I think we can also, again, I think that this film's clearly using a ton of visual symbolism, and that visual symbolism has its psychological
counterpart,
right? So again, I think that we don't have to, strictly speaking, read any of this as going on literally.
Right. That's how.
And again, it also speaks to sort of the development of the Goetic demons, even in Crowley's thought, right? Where in the early periods of time, he has this very neurological, right? Not even psychological, neurological view of the Goetic demons, which changes enormously over the course of his lifetime. So
absolutely,
I think
and it's interesting because it literally, like, this neurological view you find it in his introduction to Mother's Goetia, but then it was like early 1900s. And then, by the 1912, 1915, he already changed his perspective. Right. A lot of Thelemites never say that. They keep on saying it because it still is a way to, to make magic more palatable in a way. If it's all in your head, if it's just psychological, well, that's fine, right? But no, Crowley started with that. But, a few years later, it was already, no, that's not it. That's not how it is.
And I tell you what, that
scene of her cutting her own head off with the piano cord.
Oh, yeah, that's gruesome.
Again, sort of the horrible marionette of this demon.
Yep. There it is. This was just terrible.
What a dreadful image.
Wow.
Ugh. And again, also just
in a good horror movie
of headedness, right? Headlessness as a magical symbol, right? So again, you go back to Crowley and the rest, right? To this image of headlessness and the headless god.
Yeah.
This is a very powerful image that reaches back to antiquity.
There you go.
Yeah, the Acaphalos.
Yeah.
The Acaphalos.
Yeah, there was always there's two different interpretations of headless too. There's a divine headless, like you see in the Headless ritual, which that was a syncretic god. He had no head because you could put the head of any god on him and it would be him. Yeah. And then you have headless demons who are headless because they're completely instinct driven. They have no thought. They have no brain. They have no intelligence.
Right.
They're just.
And we just saw Paimon go into him, right? Now he's. And again, there's a debate about the image of the Kephalos that you have on your tattoo, Marco, whether those are the Neter symbols or not at the top, whether those are the symbol of God, the god, one of the god's divine symbols in Egyptian hieroglyphs. They could also be feathers. There's debate about what
it could be. It could be both. To be fair, think about it like the Nether. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't know. I
totally feel he should have died right there, and that should have been the end of the movie. This scene should not happen.
Yeah,
this killed it for me. Watching her levitate up there like a goofball.
Well, it was without the goofball, Aaron. No, it was goofball free. She had no goofball at the top. Paimon took a little off the top.
A little bit off. She's a little lighter. That's why she could float so easy.
But yeah, this imagery again. That's I think the very powerful imagery of headlessness that that's dominated this movie, and again, a powerful image in contemporary occultism. And to go back to the business of the Goetic demons as being psychological entities, and then metaphysical entities, that also happens with the HGA as well in Crowley's thinking. That,
I think that a lot of the the losing the head here is Ari Aster, trying to make to do as Crowley did, like put like the headless right before the goetia, which as we know doesn't have really nothing to do with each other, right? But it's well done. It's very well done.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, Marco, and I'm glad you did. That this may be right a visual version of the headless rite before the
headless rite,
or
a corruption
rather the bornless ritual, right?
The
Crowleyan term.
Although I do have to point out that where it comes to like those old Golden Dawn and Thelema guys that would mix, old grimoire stuff with newer ideas, and I think adding the bornless ritual to the goetia was one of the better things they did, because in the PGM, the headless ritual is an invocation you do before an exorcism. So it actually fits to do that before you do the exorcist work in the goetia. But historically, they're not connected.
Yeah.
Yeah, what an
image.
Dreadful image.
And here we get, I think it's pretty much like right out of the goetia, his description right out of the goetia almost.
Yeah.
Even the bell ringing.
And you get the two mothers without the head.
And again, I wonder if this is a nod to the Hebrew for bell.
It could be.
And
I don't know. I don't know if he was aware of that.
I mean, I wonder if Ari Aster is Jewish. It sounds like it.
At least I will hand it to him that he did, read the goetia. He did read the description of the spirit and incorporated, throughout the movie, you see little incorporations of what the spirit rules over and how he's described and all that stuff. So
I think Aster's doing what any good director does, right? He takes the source material as far as he can, and then he has to add his own artistic element to it to make it a good film.
And then
that's what any good director has to do.
I've seen plenty of movies where they don't even bother with the source material; they just make it up and slap a name on it.
Right, that's what makes Ari Aster a great director, and some of the others not so great directors.
Yep,
they're great directors and writers. Also, I think one of the things that adds a little bit to the frightening element of this movie is that if you know the Goetia, you know that Paimon's just one spirit in an ecosystem of spirits, and that all of this is actually part of just a much, much huger ecosystem.
Yeah.
I think that makes it like, when you zoom out, you're like, oh, wow, this is just a tiny bit of the drama within this much bigger world of, 8 kings of hell. There are 8, right? Like, who else is involved in all of this?
Hey, stop, or you're going to end up with a cinematic universe here.
Ari Aster,
corrected you first from
Hereditary 2. This time it's Bea.
Bea. It's a very, very, very heavy ending.
Yeah.
Also, like they use the Goetia version because you can tell that that addition of good familiars. That's a very insular kind of magic.
Yeah.
Familiars don't occur in the continent very much. It's a really insular thing.
Yeah, it's something that people miss in the grimoires. Like you read a lot of spirit descriptions that say they give good familiars.
Yeah.
And too many modern magicians think that you're supposed to summon like Baal and make Baal your familiar, and you now work with Baal. But that's not how the system originally worked. You just called Baal, who would then assign you a familiar. And that familiar is who you would work with, not Baal. So yeah, a lot of people kind of miss the point of a lot of these old texts when they're trying to put them into practice.
I love that last frame where the treehouse is just suspended in the black. Yeah, the triangle suspended, and that's the triangle of conjuring, right?
Absolutely.
Right. So it's
good point.
So it's literally the image of the circle, right, with the triangle in the middle. Like it's a great visual representation of that Goetic ritual.
And you know what else it reminds me of? A nativity scene.
Oh, right.
You're right.
It looks just like a Christmas nativity scene.
Christmas nativity scene.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very, very strong visual movie, which is why it's a great movie, right? It's also one.
It's not a bad movie. I don't hate this one.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't really hate Dark Song. I guess it's just irritated.
You kind of did. Come on.
Yeah, Aaron, I think our last viewing of it made you a little bit more of a softie on it, but you came in swinging heavy on a Dark Song.
Well, like I said, it wasn't the technical aspects of the movie I hated. It's actually beautiful, but it was just the misrepresentation of Abramelin that got my hackles up.
Right, and you're a big partisan of really doing that in a very strict traditional way. So I can imagine that anytime anyone touches your baby, whatever baby that is, it can always rub us wrong. I think it's a fantastic film. I think that what it sets out to do, it accomplishes, and we can quibble about the degree to which it gets Paimon right or the goetia right or whatever. But I think that as a film capturing sort of the imaginary of demonic conjuration, and especially in the negative sense of that word, I think it manages to be both ritually interesting, symbolically interesting, and also just like tight narration where you get these symbol sets of like reality and irreality and model and territory. I think he does the foreshadowing and how it all wraps in together, this concept of fate binding things together. I think as a piece of storytelling, I think he really pulls off something really incredible.
It's very well done.
I mean, and it's great that we can have such high standards in filmmaking, and having directors that speak about magic, right? What a great time to be alive. I mean, at least for that, not for everything else we're going through at the moment. But yeah, and again, like the fact that you, Marco and Aaron, you'll have your disagreements with certain decisions he makes, but still can come away saying, really something interesting has been accomplished here. And I think that's high praise. That's really high praise coming from, especially you two, for whom this is a spiritual practice.
I mean, it's by no means an accurate depiction of what a Solomonic tradition would look like. And they obviously sensationalized it toward the satanic and the evil and, but it's still a good movie. I mean, it's tightly written. It's a good narrative. And I do, like I said, I do appreciate the way the entire movie is the ritual. So I mean, it's you can't say it's not creative. You can't say it's not well done,
right? And I think it gives people a taste of, and you both could speak better to this than me. It gives people an entry point by which the kind of things that I've read that practitioners undergo as sort of the process by which the process through which you have to go through in order to do the magical process. It gives people a hook into that in a way that I think that that sensationalizes it and interests people such that when they get to you, Marco, or you, Aaron, you can do the work of being like, well, that's really great for filmmaking, but that's not really the ritual.
That's not how it is. Yeah.
So
I think this movie practitioners that come in from this kind of thing, it's not so much like this movie interested them and made them want to learn more. Because like I said, most people in that case are the ones you don't want because they're usually there for the wrong reasons. But you'll find, and Marco, you went through this too. When we were young, anything like this would interest us. It was more of it was more of everything together. Whether it was books we could find, and I mean crappy books like the Time Life Mysteries of the Unexplained books. Okay, horror movies, occult movies, and it's all sensationalist nonsense. But yeah, as a whole, it called to us, and we knew there was something there we wanted to explore.
To go deeper into and to find the real deal. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we wanted to find the reality behind what we were seeing. And that to me turned out to be more fascinating than the fiction, honestly.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it's such a I mean, the history is such a story. Sometimes I want to write a historical fiction novel just based on like the exploits of Dee and Kelly and the early Rosicrucians and all. I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever read Francis Yates' The Rosicrucian Enlightenment. That to me is such a fascinating tale.
It's
definitely read it, Marco. It is like
I will.
Yeah, it kind of shows the beginnings of the modern scientific movement and how that was really propagated by people who were Hermeticists and Rosicrucians and alchemists, and they're the ones who really founded the Age of Enlightenment, and that's what the Rosicrucian Enlightenment. That's what that book is about. It is
that's Francis Yates' whole thesis, right? Is that the occult is behind this? There's been debate about that in recent years, but
a novel or a movie made out of just what she wrote in that book, it would just be fascinating. So,
well, gentlemen, last thoughts. I know it's getting late for Marco, but so last thoughts on, not last thoughts, but at least last thoughts for now on Hereditary. Any sort of having seen it again, having talked through it together. I guess I'll start with Aaron. Any sort of thoughts coming away from this movie? I mean, watched it together, or do you have a new appreciation for it? Do you like it less, more? Like, where do you last thoughts, last reflections on it before we wrap up?
I'd say, like with Dark Song, I really did kind of gain a little bit more of an appreciation watching it with you guys. Just to be able to appreciate the technical aspects and how well it was shot and that it was a good story outside of its misrepresentation. That's not really here. I wasn't angry at this movie to begin with. So I'd say I feel about the same about it, but I do appreciate it. Like I said, I love the way the entire ritual was a movie. I appreciate the way he went to the source material, actually gave a damn about the source material and did his best to incorporate that through symbolism and, things here and there that if you're a Solomonic magician, you'll know. If you know, and you can catch those little things, So I appreciate it. But again, I also agree with you. It's sad that it has to delve into the spirit equals evil. And there's no in between. I mean, this movie didn't even focus on angels. I mean, there was no attempt to call, like you said, there was no calling God. There was no calling angels to help you. There was no calling Michael to bring his sword down. She was just on her damn own with these forces,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good movie, not a good representation, but it's a good movie. So that's about where I stand.
Marco?
And I'm gonna echo Aaron almost entirely. I would love to see Ari Aster doing, a movie with his skill, with his visionary approach, but where the protagonist is an actual practitioner. You're not somebody that things happen to them, but actually somebody who goes into it and say, actually I'm trying at least to be in control because I've studied it, right? Because I'm pretty sure he has this movie in him. Maybe it's not going to make for the movie is going to sell to big studios because, as we said, we're just going to repeat what Aaron said. Unfortunately, we're still at the stage where in order to get the message across and maybe even the big bucks from the studios, you need to sensationalize it. It has to be almost like evil and because it's what people still think about it when you hear demons or spirits, right? But at the same time, it's great that this movie can be done. I hope there's going to be more. That's it.
I think Marco, you raise a great point. It would be such a great movie where the occultist is the protagonist, and they're having to deal with psycho-religious fundamentalists of some kind.
Yeah,
and it turns this satanic panic thing on its head. We're like the Inquisition
kind of like
really the bad guys.
Yeah,
like a movie version of John Constantine or. I had another example in my head. I can't think of his name now, but where the occultist is the one that actually knows the main character is the one who knows what he's doing.
Yeah. I think there's a great movie to be made where we flipped this over and no longer are these no longer are these occultists the bad guys, but no, they're actually using these spirits to combat real evil forces, which would be like the modern day equivalent of inquisitors. People
that would be fantastic. It would be nice to have a movie like that doesn't then become an action movie. You know what? Because things like that then easily become like an action movie. Right. I would love to see an Ari Aster movie, but with this narrative behind it. Right?
Yeah, I think it's like a fantastic idea. Well, Ari Aster, if you're listening, we'd love to, you know, and even in his own universe, right, where there's someone else summoning one of the other Goetic, you know, spirits to like combat this evil version of Paimon or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Mhm.
I don't know what the right word version of it is, but yeah, I also agree with the let's not make it a Marvel movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. Make it a psychological thriller, just like this, just like the one we just watched. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I just want to say again, thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise and your experience with me and with other folks watching Esoterica. Just really happy and grateful and blessed that you guys are friends of the channel and share so
Thank you.
much wisdom in the form of taking, you know, watching movies with me, which I just really appreciate and again feel really
This
honored.
is so much fun. Thank you for having us here, man. This is awesome.
Absolutely. It's amazing.
Of course, it's
Every time you want to do it again, you know where we are.
All right, well, let's pick it,
Yep,
get another
same.
one. I'm sure there's plenty more movies out there, but all right, guys. Well, I know we're watching this a couple days before Halloween, but I do want to wish both of you and everyone watching a very happy Halloween and a very meaningful Samhain. You know, it's a special time of the year, and I really hope it is meaningful for both of you and for anyone and everyone watching. I really hope it's meaningful and powerful.
Absolutely. Happy Halloween,
So would it
everybody.
be. Happy Halloween.
Blessed Samhain.